Hello, I'm Emma Jones, and this is my final major project called Bees, Trees and Factories. So before I start discussing the project in depth, I just want to give a brief overview. The product is an educational environmental game for children, which aims to support teachers and parents in their delivery of environmental education. The project originated with my research report, where I discussed how design can be used to support the environmental education of young people. And this line of inquiry was inspired by the youth climate activists who've been protesting the lack of positive environmental progress from the government, and this has been going on for about 18 months. Leading on from these strikes is another student-led campaign called Teach the Future, and this is all about educational reform in England so that learning reflects the future challenges that young people will face. And as you can see from this data, both teachers and pupils are calling for this, as there aren't currently enough resources. My brief from this project was to design a game that supported the environmental education of Key Stage 2 pupils. This target market has been chosen because younger children struggle to understand issues of this scale, and older children do have some provision in geography and science in secondary school. I wanted the game to be engaging, so I wanted it to be fun and challenging. I wanted it to open up conversations around environmental issues as well. And I also wanted it to be batch produced. So I first wanted to see how viable a product of this nature would be, and I found several WGSN reports which supported the idea of an environmental children's product. As you can see, reusable packaging that doesn't use plastic is popular, as are wooden toys and products which encourage learning about nature. I also conducted some primary research with parents of children in the target market age group, and these findings sort of confirmed to me that the project's direction was worth pursuing, so a lot of parents would consider buying wooden toys for their child, and it's sort of like 50-50 as to whether children are learning about the environment or not. So concept generation started in the early research phase, and these are just some of my initial ideas. I actually ended up taking elements from each of these, which are very loose concepts, and this was incorporated to form the final product. So here I was sketching out like wooden blocks, reusable packaging, board games, and the elements which were highly influential in the final outcomes. These are like the cards, the geometric shapes, the balancing board. So when it came to developing the concept, this shows the original forms I was thinking of for like a balancing game. And then I came across this wooden children's wobble board, and that inspired the final design. So testing was conducted with card at first to get the curvature right for the rockers, and this was then modelled in plywood. When developing the stacking blocks, I originally went with quite complex forms that represented the environmental factors. Then, when realising how challenging these would be to produce, I decided to simplify the forms and displayed the icons on the actual shape faces. I then looked into flatter extruded forms and tested different methods of applying the icons. But although the handmade feel of the pyrography icons looked really good, they were really messy, and the laser rastering just gave a much more professional finish. Further testing was also done with like the drawstring bag and applying colour elements to the plywood prototype as well. So when it came to applying colour, I tested milk paint, which is a powder paint made from the milk protein casein, and this is entirely biodegradable and safe for children, as it contains only natural minerals and pigments, and this is what would be used for all coloured plywood aspects of the game. So for graphic development, I went through several iterations of icon styles before finalising these. The icons for the blocks were then developed to be shown on the playing cards, and the playing card styles were then developed from there. First card set iteration used block colour icons which were a bit childish, so these were developed to include the same colours in a more mature way, and I also added wild cards just to make the game a bit more interesting. Due to COVID-19, I unfortunately wasn't able to test the game with children or in schools as I'd intended, but instead we did manage to test the game several times in the studio, although obviously the results could have been very different with children. Though through playing it I did sort of establish that the board size and rockers were okay, as were the block shapes and dimensions, and we also actually found it was very entertaining and genuinely frustrating to play. So the final product is a balancing board, which comes in 3 easy to assemble parts. Stacking blocks, a rule card, drawstring storage bag, and double-sided playing cards, and they are shown in more detail here. And this is an in-context shot of how the product to be used. So the rules of the game are fairly straightforward, and it's been designed so that it can be simplified for younger age groups. So it's a case of just assembling the board and rockers. You shuffle the cards with the balancing side face up, and you decide which gameplay will be used. There's 3 different ways of sort of balancing the blocks on the board for the game that should be decided. So you take a card, you decide whether the icon displayed on that card is good or bad. If you're correct, you pick up the corresponding block. And the whole point is to like avoid collapsing the earth. So the production scale for this product is batch produced to keep the costs down as much as possible whilst maintaining high quality. And all the materials would come from ethical sources. So for the board and rockers, it's a lignin adhesive plywood. For the double-sided playing cards, recycled board is used. For the stacking blocks, it's FSC approved ash and dark oak. And for the drawstring bag, an off-white linen and a recycled drawstring is used. So I've calculated 3 sets of costings for the product. So the first one is a one-off prototype, and that's without the university facilities, and that comes out at £119. The next one is a initial product launch batch of 50 items, and that comes out at £40. And then I've done a post-production launch of 1,000 items, and that goes down to £30. So you can see each time as the numbers increase, the cost becomes lower because of the scale of the production processes that would be taking place. As most successful games have a memorable name and logo, I felt this was an important aspect to the game. So a logo was developed to be displayed on the packaging and card box, and then this was modified to include the coloured aspects of the board face. So the game was originally intended to be sold just to schools, and this would occur through companies such as TTS, and they supply like furniture, stationery, games to schools. But I also thought the product could be aimed at certain retails for the benefit of like forward-thinking parents who wish to support their child's learning in this way. And this could be done through places such as like National Trust gift shops, like high-end design-driven wooden toy shops such as Scandiborn, or like the high street, more affordable ethical toy retailers such as Mulberry Bush. As I've not been able to produce or properly test this game, I'd like to carry on working on it. I'd really like to make a fully working prototype and test this with families and schools, and develop a teacher pack of resources that could be used alongside it. I'd also like to resume contact with Genius STEAM House, and they're using STEM subjects to help children come up with creative ways to combat climate change. I'd also like to continue working on it and consider extensions to the product, such as maybe like an adult drinking game version or card and block extension packs that include other environmental factors. And that's everything. Thank you very much for listening.